The creativity question of the week comes from Kevin, who submitted his question on my online survey. Now, the survey question is this: what is the most important question that I need to answer in my upcoming online course on how to reconnect with your creative self? Now, if you think of your own creativity question as you watch this, just go to i-i.com, fill out the survey there, and you'll also be added to the mailing list for updates on the course as it is completed. So here's the question that Kevin had, which I'll answer in this video. Describe and map the relationship between the internally creative individual mind and the outwardly collaborative group mind of a musical band. I thought this was a great question because there are definitely some differences between individual and group creativity. Pros and cons to both, some similarities, and also some things to be aware of if you are working in one of these creative situations. My ambient music project, I-I, is an example of individual creativity because I do that by myself. But I have also worked with many different groups in different roles. Everything from being a director to being a band member to being a technician and everything else in between. So let's really break this down and get to the core of what's happening. First, with a single creative individual, and then how that changes when you bring other people into the mix. Here is a person. A person is a uniquely formed self. This person is unique because they have been uniquely formed by influences like their genetics, their upbringing, and their life experiences. And over time, this person has established their own preferences, their own perspectives, and their own ways of thinking, feeling, and living in the world. Of course, this is completely normal, but all these factors do condition the person to repeat certain ways of thinking, certain ways of doing things, and certain ways that they tend to react as they go about life. Again, this is normal, but it's not so much creative as it is repetitive. At the same time, every person also carries with them a space that I will call creative energy, which is always there, but unlike the personal self, it doesn't have a form and it is not conditioned. It's less like a person and more like the sky and the sunlight that simply provides light and space for people to go about their business. This light itself doesn't actually move or change, but depending on what's going on in its presence, it will highlight some things and cast shadows on other things, but in an ever-changing way from our perspective. This light could also be called consciousness, which is what gives us self-awareness. We live our life, but we can also see that we live our life. And that's what it means to be a conscious being, self-awareness. So what does consciousness have to do with creativity? Well, it has to do with perspective. When a person sees their life only from their conditioned perspective, they will tend to repeat patterns that fit in with that conditioning. But when a person is more consciously aware, it gives them a view of things from that higher perspective, and they will be able to see the highlights and the shadows and connections that they may have completely missed when they were just using their old conditioned perspective. And because of that, consciousness is an ever-present source of fresh perspective on yourself and the world you live in. So you are never really limited to simply repeating your old preconditioned patterns. And that's how a person connects with their creative energy. Now, let's say our hypothetical person here gets inspired by their creative energy and they get an idea of something new to bring into the world. Maybe it solves a problem, or maybe it creates a piece of music. Depending on how the person responds to that inspiration, the creative idea may get ignored or pushed away, at which point there's a very good chance that the inspiration will just evaporate. Or the person might attempt to realize the creative idea, but their conditioning causes them to feel discouraged or fearful, and then they give up on the idea. Or the person does all the things that they need to do to realize the idea, and it is brought into existence where it can be seen or heard in the world. When that happens, the creative process is complete and we have what we can call a creation, which could be anything from making a meal or fixing a faucet, growing a plant, painting a picture, programming an app, or writing a piece of music. When a person gets an idea inspired by their creative energy, and then they do the work to bring it into existence. So if that wasn't interesting enough, let's talk about what happens when you put more than one person into a creative group. Same thing applies where creative energy is converted into a form through the creative process. But the difference now is that you have multiple uniquely formed people working together. Each person involved still has access to that same creative energy, but now it will be filtered in multiple different ways because each person in the group sees things through their own completely different conditioned perspectives. Now, the beautiful and amazing potential of this is the ability to create things that incorporate more variety, more depth, and more scale than would be accomplished by one person by themselves. Now, this applies to any kind of creative group, like a musical duo, a band, a creative planning team, all the way up to something massive like a cast and crew producing a feature film. The possibilities with a creative group are infinite and staggering to consider. But I won't say that group creativity is somehow better than individual creativity, or vice versa. Creative success in every case is going to be highly dependent on the people involved. But in the case of groups, it also depends on how all of the members relate to each other. But still, there are some very general pros and cons to be aware of. While individual creativity can be more immediate and more focused, it will also be limited to the experiences and perspectives of the one person doing the creating. And while group creativity can bring a lot more variety and depth because more people are involved, it will also tend to be more complicated and drawn out. And there's always the potential for conflict when people in the group disagree on how things should be done, or perhaps the personalities just don't get along together very well. So in creative groups, I think it's vitally important that there is an agreed purpose and an agreed format, and that everyone involved understands that. Some groups will be more equally collaborative, while others will be led by one person. There's no right or wrong way to format a creative group. If everyone involved understands and agrees to a common purpose and agrees to do their part within the agreed format, this will go a long way toward keeping the group functional and successful. And that's where I'll leave it for today. Thanks again, Kevin, for that great question. So what's the creativity question that you want me to answer? Let me know by going to i-i.com and completing that short survey. And you'll also be added to the mailing list to get updates about that online course as I'm completing it over the next few months. So thanks for watching, and I look forward to hearing from you soon.